Welcome. I'm Marc Niemes on behalf of HealthXN. Welcome to the Health Learning Intelligence series. And today we have the honor of speaking to CEO and co-founder of HealthXL, Martin Kelly from the lovely Dublin, I believe, today.
That's right. Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening, where you are.
That's right. So I think we're going to have to start having some meetings where we have pretty vistas in the background or something. But the lovely Dublin. HealthXL, of which Martin is the convener and founder of, is holding a hackathon called basically Hacking Aging. And what would be great, what we'd like to talk about today is this event that's being held from July 10th to 12th. And what is it that prompted somebody like a HealthXL to undertake this in Melbourne, Australia? Now, what might be good for some people is obviously to go through a little bit of the background about how you, what was your impetus behind founding HealthXL, and then a little bit about what you around the hackathon.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the opportunity. So HealthXL is a collaboration with we're up with 13 of some of the largest brands in healthcare. We bring together big hospital systems, big pharma companies, payers, technology companies, etc. The reason we started was we see a huge opportunity in health to use technology, or what we call digital health. And we really believe that entrepreneurs are going to drive that that change, but we also recognize that it's incredibly difficult sector to innovate in. So we recognize there's a huge role for established players to get involved in innovation and to help actually scale it up. So our model is we work with these large institutions across the sector, try to understand what are the really important challenges they're facing. We go out and validate those with patients, and then we hunt really exciting entrepreneurs to go and work on these, we call them challenges. So that's very quickly what HealthXL is.
And some of your sort of clients or partners in this field, what do they see? What's the advantage of dealing with somebody like a HealthXL?
Yeah, so I guess innovation is hard. Innovation within big companies is hard. So, to really drive meaningful impact, you really have to collaborate with others from, whether it's a big pharmaceutical companies or payers, or, innovation in the sector is going to take a multi-stakeholder approach. So that's the first thing. I think we help convene that. And then secondly, how do you, as a large organization, how do you work with entrepreneurs? So, there's a great phrase, which is to really innovate in difficult times, you have to work with people that aren't like you. If you're really going to find something interesting, you're going to have to work with people who aren't sort of the same backgrounds and the same experience. And so what we do is we help convene that group. We're a global organization. So we just brought on Apollo hospitals out of India recently, and they have like 50 hospitals in their network. But what's very interesting is looking at how they innovate versus how a Cleveland Clinic or a Partners Healthcare innovates. And so you get to kind of see the best of both worlds. And I think we're kind of uniquely positioned to try and help bring that global perspective, and also the perspective of large institutions who have huge customer franchises with the latest disruptive innovators.
So as a entity, if innovation is something that these large companies tend to, what we find is that they're sort of like big companies are on the inside that are trying to break out, whereas a lot of the innovative companies are on the outside trying to break in. How do you actually foster that in a global way? You've got some very strong partners there. As you say, each one probably has a different thing that they can add.
Yeah, exactly. So we take an approach which is top down in some ways, where we try to identify, rather than going and starting a company and trying to figure out who your customer is. We kind of start the other way around, which is like, okay, what are the problems that these large health organizations are having and their patients are having, and what's the market need? So that's how we start, from the kind of inside out point of view. And then from the outside in point of view, we think that entrepreneurs and their energy are going to be key to actually driving some initiatives. So the way we marry those two groups up together, because they're very different, is we really promote the idea that this is a peer network. So it doesn't matter if you're the head of healthcare at Jensen, for example, or you're the CEO of a four-man company. You're both peers, and so we're really trying to create a level playing ground where people come in with different perspectives, but if you can focus around the patient and focus around the healthcare challenge, and we have so many of them, then hopefully we can identify what each different group brings.
You travel quite a lot. Are you a couple of things? What do you see are perhaps 3 common problems, or 3 to 5 common problems around the world? And is there now truly a sense of collaboration to actually solve these things?
Yeah, so I think the numbers vary slightly, Mark, but the problems are very common, right? So if you look at what's happening in the US in terms of the cost of healthcare, it's sort of approaching 20% of GDP, which is just incredible. So it's not the same in every country, but we simply can't afford our healthcare systems globally. So that's a massive challenge or opportunity, depending on how you look at it. So that's number one. Number two is access. It really staggers the mind to think that there's depending on who you talk to, 50 to 70% lack of access to proper healthcare systems around the world. I mean, if you look at the amount of funding that's going into medical technology and pharmaceuticals, to end up with a situation where a significant part of the world's population don't have access to proper healthcare. So you have this duality of having to reduce costs, having to increase access, and so I think that kind of leads to the third part, which is innovation and how technology can be adopted. And you look at how technology has transformed our industries. It's only really started to scratch the surface in healthcare. What we see in terms of the second part of your question around collaboration is, I think everyone who's around the table, and the reason they're around the HealthXL table is they recognize they're not going to solve these problems on their own. And that's interesting. Large organizations like IBM, 400,000 plus people recognize that they're on very deep relationships with clients, recognize they're not going to solve these problems on their own. It's going to involve bringing together, a series of these large organizations, but also the best innovators and venture capitalists to drive it. So I think everybody recognizes that, and people have a real desire to collaborate, but I think it's incredibly tough. And I think we're finding our way of how to do that effectively. So I think that we're at that stage where people are saying we need a new way of working, but exactly what that is, we're trying to explore and develop. Which is
kind of interesting. I think you mentioned health is somewhere between 18 and 20% of GDPs in the United States. In Australia, it seems to be it's sitting somewhere around 10 or 11. And the question is, what is a healthy number? What should you be? And many conferences in Australia I've gone to where they cite that there are pockets of brilliance, certainly in the US system, as far as actual care standards, care goes. But as far as a system, it's not a model that generally people actually look up to and want to reflect on. It tends to be a Northern European model that people say is probably a bit more sustainable one.
Right.
I guess, secondly, the second point to that is how much, when we're talking healthcare and budgets, there seems to be such an emphasis on the end of healthcare, the hospital, the group, that building. The human nature says that we'll spend 10 times as much to solve a problem once it's there, rather than actually 10% actually preventing it. So what is there in reality, are there any tactical things that can really be done to bring the cost down by avoiding going to these institutions in the first place? And B, coming to Australia, what do you see some of those being solved?
So if I understand your question correctly, it's about how do we start to think about less episodic care?
How do we do the pre-care? So there's a lot of emphasis on once they get to hospital. In many cases, it's too late. So my advisory counsel is, 80% of conditions in hospital tend to be of technical preventable nature.
Right.
So how do we basically inspire people to do things in advance?
Yeah, and that's, one of our big, we have three moonshots which we can talk about, but one of those is around behavioral change. And so there's a lot of initiatives around integrated care and care at home, and well-being and population management. And if you look at what started a lot of this investment and activity in digital health, it was a lot of the legislation that came in the US, which actually focused on financial penalties for various activities. So that has actually got people focused on it. I think there's a couple of parts. So I think there's a lot of initiatives going on to try and improve, to provide integrated care and to provide care at home, and that's certainly a huge topic we're looking at. But I think even at a higher level than that, having people think about themselves as the CEO of their own health. In a lot of cases, people have health put upon them or have healthcare put upon them rather than them being at the center of it. And, Eric Topol's book, The Patient Will See You Now, I think is a great kind of metaphor for the change that needs to happen. And there's two parts to that. One is the healthcare system supporting that, and the other is that the patient feeling empowered to do it and having the. So I think that's the big macro shift that will happen. I think that has to happen, but I think that's a long journey. And we talk about moonshots as being things that are far away that we know we have to strive for, but we don't know how we're going to get there. And I think that idea of kind of the CEO of your own health is one of those initiatives where people will have responsibility and be empowered to manage their health in a much more proactive way.
So, HealthXL as a global organization, we're now fast forwarding a little bit on July 10th to 12th in Melbourne, where you're convening a hackathon. For those of you who don't know what a hackathon is, can you explain in a couple sentences what a hackathon is and what you think it can really achieve from a health perspective?
Yeah, so it's basically a crazy weekend where bunches of people come together from different disciplines, so medics, engineers, designers, patients, to try and build things and to try and really understand problems and to do it in a very active way. So rather than sitting around talking, people come together and say, here's a real problem, can you go and help build something that will make it tangible, what a potential solution might look like. So it's kind of like rapid prototyping over a weekend where teams form and then existing teams can come into it. We started this journey because we were working on some initiatives around heart failure, and a number of our partners have offices in Australia, so people like IBM and ResMed and Bupa. And we came together to talk about heart failure, but as we're talking about that, we discovered a much bigger initiative around aging. So the weekend we've set out a series of challenges around dementia, social isolation and malnutrition, and how they apply to an aging population. We've worked with Nord and Health extensively to come up with those topics. And then we were asking people to come forward and basically spend the weekend prototyping and developing solutions and putting them in front of clinicians and patients and seeing if they might make a difference.
So one of the great things, having attended a few hackathons for different industry types, is you actually don't want all the same people from the same industry. In fact, it works really, really well when you have people that have a specific knowledge of, a lot of people say, oh, hackathon, are you going to come out of the room with an app? Or are you going to come out of the room with something to change behavior? The point is, we actually don't know what will come out of that room, but there's a structure, like in a laboratory, there's a structure for how you actually work through that. And one of the great things is you've got these incredible moonshots that you want to achieve. But in a hackathon, we have a problem. We're working with health institutions like a Northern Health. You have a problem around dementia. And there's three, or aging population, of which the three areas that these groups within the hackathon you want to have active solutions to is dementia, social isolation, as you mentioned, and physical activity, and malnutrition. Anywhere else in the world, the hackathons you've been to, what would your advice be on what type of companies you actually want to see there?
Yeah, so I think I have a very personal view, which is, innovation is driven by passionate individuals or entrepreneurs. So, you want, it's not as much about the idea as, what happens after the weekend, and how driven and determined are the individuals to make that happen. Because in some ways the idea is the easy part. The execution and the life of an entrepreneur is pretty tough. So, you want to find people who really have fire in their belly, who are going to walk through walls to make this stuff happen. So, in some ways, the weekend for me isn't necessarily about the idea. It's about bringing together groups of individuals who may not come together naturally, and then finding each other and getting behind something that goes on and lives, beyond the weekend. And it'll probably change shape, and it'll probably end up something different. Yep. But it's really, one of the ones we ran a while ago, we had this guy come to us on a Friday night, say, I've never been, he was working in a hospital here, and he said, I've never been to one of these, and I don't think I want to come, I'm quite nervous. And he said, but I've got this idea, but we kind of encouraged him to come along, and at the end of the night, the guy stood up and said, okay, I'm quitting my job. I'm going to go off and create this company. I really believe this has given me enough of a start. And he's done that. And so, 2 years later, his company is, now starting to scale up. This isn't something that happens over a weekend, but he's got funding on board, he's got customers. And so it was, but that was a very long 2 years. And so it was interesting to see how, he just, drove it, and he was the guy who made it happen.
The example I often use is that healthcare is a bit like Britannica in a Wikipedia world. And if you're having a procedure being undertaken with you, you probably want the Britannica doctor at that point in time. You probably want that knowledge, that classic, that training. Technically, Wikipedia is probably more accurate in many cases, but it's more accurate because of a group. And when you have a group like this, how do the personality? Are you going to see anything where you have this reserved group of medicos saying, "No, we can't do that. We can't do that." Whereas these unbridled people that don't know any better go, "Of course you can. We can do that. We can."
Yeah,
do that.
right. So naivety is a great thing,
Yeah.
and you probably wouldn't innovate if you weren't naive to a certain degree. I include myself in that statement. So the people we want are people who are experienced, but also open-minded and passionate. And if people don't have those characteristics, then this probably isn't going to be interesting for them. They're probably not going to get anything out of it. But we think there's huge cohorts of doctors and clinicians and health service professionals who want to do things differently, but they're super busy in their day jobs. Innovation is hard, so it's difficult to know where to start. And what we're trying to do is create an environment of like-minded people who won't start the conversation by saying, hey, can you sign this NDA, or what about IP? Who'll start the conversation by saying, well, let's try and understand what you're trying to do, and here's my idea for making a difference. And further down the line, you can put structure around it, but people need to come in with an open mind, and passion is infectious, and the best entrepreneurs I know are the ones that get people super excited and bring them on a journey of what the future could look like. And I think you want to bring together open-minded people with different experience, because that's what's going to drive something new and exciting.
Well, as you said, people generally, 80-90% of the people that are in health are there because they want to do good. It's right. One of the industries where they actually, I call it a digital nudge, where they haven't had that digital nudge. They're so busy doing what they're doing that often that little nudge they need to get going is often something that's just kind of beyond them. So I'd be really interested as it goes off, and we'll certainly be interviewing people throughout the session and post the session about what would it be like if we could. And I know my 10-year-old daughter just had to put a speech together, and her opening line was from one of Einstein's quote that if you had to choose between intelligence and imagination, he would take imagination every time, because you need to imagine it before you can actually do it. Whereas I think there's probably a whole a little bit jaded, or a little bit constrained, shall we say, health workers that want
Yeah.
it good but feel constrained by their environments to make it happen.
Absolutely. And I mean, people are super busy, right? I mean, they're sort of working incredibly long hours, working with patients. And so then at the end of it, to have the energy and to know how to kind of get started with some of these ideas is difficult. But if you can create create an environment of like-minded people, I think that's hugely powerful.
So with this hackathon, which again is happening in Melbourne, what do you hope to take back to the wider group worldwide?
Yeah.
In a perfect scenario for you, what do you hope to walk away with?
Yeah, so first of all, we hope it's not just a single event, and there's commitment on behalf of the sponsors to go and trial some of the best solutions. So we hope that we'll be able to come back in 3 and 6 months time and see how those trials are going. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we want to these are global topics, as you say, so we want to bring these back to our partners around the world and say, here's what we learned in Australia. And what we love about this approach is it's very hands-on and it's very practical. And so you can say, we build out these personas of individuals. So people can say, well, look, Mary is 73 years old. She has this condition. She's living on her own. That makes it very, very personal. And then looking at, what actually physically comes out that people can get their heads around and understand at a very, very tactical level. And so sharing that with our members. And we hope then that some of the ideas that we see, if there's enough interest from the entrepreneurs, that we can try and set up trials with other partners, match them up with folks who care about it.
Yep. Okay. So from the, as these ideas are propagated and hopefully go back to the wider group, it goes back to your first comment that says, actually what you need is the cohorts from other industries mixing with the health industries to actually sort of almost inspire them, to show them what's possible. And in many cases, I see a lot of aviation examples that often sneak into health examples. They're saying, well, if they do this in aviation, if they credit this way in aviation, if they simulate this way in aviation, a lot of what sort of happens in health. So what other industries do you really think could benefit from actually this approach? So what industries, in a perfect world, is it logistics? Who would you really like to see together to see what they would actually come up with?
Yeah, so I think aviation is a great example because it's highly complex. The safety is a huge part of it. So there's a lot of analogies and it's very capital intense. So I think, when you see innovation in that industry, you can then compare it to health. I think one of the big areas we see is around design and consumer products and services. So we hear a lot, there's a recognition that, for various reasons, we've lost sight of the end patient and what they really need. And so if you think about what consumer companies focus on, in terms of really understanding the mind of the consumer, that's a huge part, and so whether that's, consumer electronic goods like Apple or, more FMCG type of companies, they really understand the mindset. And coming back to our earlier point about being the CEO of your own health, that means these companies really need to understand what motivates individuals, what's going to drive them to do things differently. Behavior change is very hard, but that's what consumer companies are expert at. So we think that's a great industry. And then obviously technology. So digital health is kind of the intersection of the medical world and technology world. So we think that there's huge learnings there as well.
Beautiful. So for people that want to come and register for the event, they can go to healthxl.org. Front page, there is a link to the hackathon for Melbourne. And as a refresh, it happens from July 10th to the 12th.
Correct.
In Carlton and Melbourne at the Carlton Connect Initiative, which is a lovely building, and people will be coming and going throughout the weekend. And then on the Sunday is where the actual presentations happen based on that collaborative work for the preceding days to actually present what they've actually come up with. So it's in some cases, knowing entrepreneurs like I do, they'll probably have already built something,
Right.
not just talk about it.
Yeah, we hope so.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah. So so they would have already built something. So so we'd love to continue to provide updates for the event. From a registration perspective, if people would like to register, absolutely go straight to the healthxl.org website, hack aging link. Is there anything else, if you had to appeal to passionate individuals to come along to this event, what would you say? What's your two sentences where you'd say, hey, this is why this would be important for you to come along?
Yeah, if you care about this topic, and a lot of people do, then I think there's a couple of things. One is, the winning solutions will be tested in a real environment, and that's, I think that's hugely valuable. Secondly, some of the people who are coming down are very well known internationally. So we have the co-founder of Misfit Wearables, Sridhar, coming down. So, and we have some other folks internationally. So I think that's great. And then thirdly, we have an opportunity to show some of these solutions to our international partners. So, if this is a topic that you feel passionate about, either if you already have something or you have just experience, then we're pretty open. We're a pretty open church. We'd love to see people who believe that they can drive some change.
Well, wonderful. One of the great things about HealthXN is we believe in speed and basically not reinventing the wheel. So if the problem has been solved by another industry type, usually that great innovation is that aha moment as it comes through. So I very much look forward to talking with you again in person when you're in Melbourne with the wider team. And it cannot be underestimated the access that an event like this provides in regards to both the problem and the actual intellectual muscle around the solution, theoretically and practically. Can't be underestimated. And it's great to have something like HealthXL, which is a global entity. And I know people get HealthXL and HealthXN, people think we're somehow related, but we're not. It just must be great names. But we look forward to providing an update of the event. And just as a summary from a HealthXN perspective, our next, so thank you very much, Martin, for your time.
Thank you, Mark, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I look forward to you coming down. I think you're going to be one of our mentors as well, so we're delighted.
That's right, and I love it. Is that enthusiasm is infectious. So most people say my enthusiasm. I love being the not smartest person in the room. Fantastic, and it's great to have you. So from a HealthXN perspective and a webinar perspective, thank you very much. And for those of you that attend the other Health Learning Intelligence webinar series, our next interview will be on the use of social media for healthcare industries. And also stay tuned. After that, we have a webinar with HealthXN's chairman around the Revolution series from Professor Stephen Voyages. So again, on behalf of HealthXN and Health Learning Intelligence, thank you to Martin Kelly from HealthXL. Jeez, so many little XLs in here. And we look forward to seeing you all in July 10th to 12th at the Hack Aging event in Melbourne. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, I will stop.